Okay,
It is pretty awesome.
riddle me this. What do we have going on here now? Oh, Sonos for commercial applications. I can't see anything with these things on. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We got Sonos here with us, Matthew Newman, and we got Roger and Alberto, a few people here from Sonos who's going to walk us through the new Era 100 Pro model, which is going to be released in Q1 of next year. Talk about commercial applications in Sonos should be a pretty exciting hour. If you haven't got your lunch from Grubhub and our food court, please make sure to do so. Also, make sure to visit the Sonos booth in our main hall they're a platinum sponsor of ours. So make sure you get your 10 points there, and you'll have 50 points for being on this webinar, and we'll have it recorded, and you get 20 points for watching it after the fact. If you have somebody on your team who wants to review this information, you can see that after the fact in our recorded section of our virtual conference center. So we have Matthew here from Sonos to go over some new products. Sonos is getting more into the commercial space, so it's really exciting. We also have our Q&A section down here. Please make sure to ask questions. And I got a poll here that we're going to go live with. If you could go ahead and take that poll, help us help you. So we appreciate you being here, Matthew.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. Incredibly excited to be here with you all throughout this entire week. I think we have another 2 sessions after this through the week that I'll be joining you on. So yeah, real quick, I am currently fighting a little sinus infection thing going on. So if I have to stop and take a quick sip of water, please just bear with me here. But as mentioned, we're talking Sonos and for commercial customers and commercial applications. We're going to talk through a whole commercial solution that we have. Not any one of these things is a solution by itself. It's all really, I would love for you all to think about it as a solution together. First, a quick introduction. My name is Matt Newman, and I'm a senior global trainer here with Sonos, getting ready to celebrate 11 years. And with me on the line is Roger Lowe, who's a senior. Oh, right on. Thank you. Thank you kindly. With me is Roger Lowe, who's a senior account manager. Many of you probably know Roger. Which I think he's one of the few people that have been here longer than me, at least on the field team anyways.
There's a couple others, but yeah, I passed my 11-year mark in October, so I'm not far ahead of you, Newman.
Okay. All right. Right on. And we don't have a picture of his pretty mustache, but we also, as mentioned, have Alberto on the line, who's our national distribution manager. So they say. I still have not confirmed that he does work for a living, but just kidding. But yeah, we are here together. We're going to answer all of your questions today. Anything that's more Sonos product technical related probably would be answered by me. Anything more account related, probably Roger or Berto. But we're going to make sure that you all have the information you need to talk about Sonos in commercial applications. Our agenda looks like this. We're going to talk first about our opportunity with Sonos in the commercial space. Then we're going to talk Era 100 Pro. And again, really think of Era 100 Pro as a solution. Of course, the speaker itself, the surface mount, and zones, which we're excited to introduce you to. That's all one solution. And then with Sonos Pro, we really meet the end-to-end user needs of a commercial application with Sonos. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. If I remember right, I think I have an hour to get through all of this, and I have a lot of content to get through. So we're going to make sure that we get your questions answered in some way, shape, or form. Quickly, though, new from Sonos, just wanted to address the elephant in the room. The Sonos app. We get it. A couple of months ago, we launched this new version of the app that is just it did not meet standard Sonos expectations, and we know that as well. But we want you to know that we've been all hands on deck with getting this software at parity or at level experience with the previous version of the app. And our internal data shows that we are pretty much there with an update that happened recently and another update that's getting ready to happen soon. We are actually going to exceed the reliability expectations of the previous version of our app. So hopefully you've been hearing app conversations die down, and over the course of the next few weeks, you should start having less and less of those conversations. Also, a few months ago, we also announced Sonos Ace. So the Sonos Ace, actually, Roger and I both have our headsets on. Berto, I noticed you didn't have yours on. Just saying. But our headset is this is a premium pair of headphones, noise canceling, 30 plus hours of battery life, and can be used with home theater products for TV audio swap, which is pretty awesome. So these are now available. We also have recently announced a integration with some of our biggest control partners, where we've added the search functionality to those partners' interfaces. So now you can use Control 4, for example, to search within Sonos. And we have these other brands here. If you are wondering about one in specific, we would encourage you to reach out to that brand to see if they've either already launched this update or if they're when they are going to launch the update to do search within the Sonos ecosystem. Okay, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about Sonos in the commercial space. So a couple of years ago, we basically asked ourselves, like, hey, what if we just jumped into the commercial space? What if we just, actually like put real effort into providing commercial experiences? We know that people love taking the experience that they get inside of their home with Sonos and bringing that over into a commercial space. I mean, people have been doing it for years. Since I've been working at Sonos, people, you'll look up at a brewery or at a coffee shop or a sandwich shop, and you look up and they're playing music from their Sonos speakers. In fact, I can always kind of tell when somebody's using a Sonos speaker, and my wife and I will be somewhere and I'll look up and I'll be like, yep, I knew it. There's some Sonos, right? So, people have been taking that experience that they know and love in a residential space, and they've been bringing it over into a commercial space. But Sonos isn't necessarily designed or previously hasn't been designed for a commercial space with commercial needs in mind. In our 20-year history, we've been designing products for customers, and it's, been a holistic solution for a residential space. But we've estimated that about 75,000 of our existing households are actually commercial households. And so we spent, years doing research. What does somebody in a commercial space need from Sonos? Why are people using Sonos in commercial spaces when they're designed for residential ones? And what we found is that businesses trust Sonos. People who own Sonos in their homes, they trust Sonos to deliver that same experience inside of their place of business. And so we've really spent a lot of time, asking, these brands, like, hey, people that we know are commercial customers, like, what do you want from Sonos in a commercial space? What are you looking for? Talking to installers and saying, like, hey, what does Sonos need to do to be a viable option in the commercial space? So that's kind of, what we want to talk about here today is, these opportunities that we have in these commercial spaces or these light commercial projects. We know that, from our research that these light commercial projects, which is really where Sonos tends to shine, they tend to be a little more lower budget than, some of these mass, some of the, these big commercial jobs. So, we needed to consider that when we're designing solutions for a commercial space. We know that, a lot of times that, these installations can be complicated and somewhat unfamiliar, especially for a residential focused installer, which is the installer that's primarily using our products to install audio in their space. We know that there's a high cost associated with engineering, programming, commissioning, from the, to the integrator to be able to install some of these more complex systems. And then there's a lot more involved in teaching employees how to use these more complex systems that we tend to find in commercial spaces. We know that there's higher turnover, for example, in some of these light commercial spaces, which again is really where Sonos shines, and people are using Sonos. So not only are you having to teach people how to use a Sonos system or these other systems that may actually be more complex, you're having to retrain people over and over again because there tends to be higher turnover at these places of business. So we knew that when we were developing our commercial solution, it had to be a simple system to design, and there had to be flexibility in that solution. It had to be easy to sell, allowing or giving installers the ability to leverage Sonos as the brand for customers who are already familiar with Sonos, but to deliver a clean, consistent, and repeatable installation experience for those customers. Our software needed to be upgraded because there are just needs in a commercial space that aren't there in a residential space usually. We needed to ensure that this was scalable, it was easy to grow, and that there were opportunities for reoccurring revenue or some sort of a service where installers had more of a hands-on with their customers after the point of sale. So with Sonos, we really wanted to create this holistic solution, starting with the Sonos app. That's one of the primary reasons consumers love our products. The app is just simple to use. They don't have to spend a lot of time learning it, and they can pick it up and use it easily. With Sonos Pro, which we'll talk about later, it's been out for over a year now, maybe actually over 2 years now, I think. Sonos Pro is, a software as a service that is designed with the commercial customer in mind. And then with Era 100 Pro, we now have the hardware that's designed for a commercial customer. So I'm excited to introduce you all to Era 100 Pro. This is our first ever professional hardware that's designed for the professional installer. The Era 100 Pro reimagines the Era 100 that people know and love, but with power over Ethernet, a custom design mount in zones, a feature that will be available when we launch the Era 100 Pro. That is a solution for commercial customers. Best of all, Era 100 Pro is sold exclusively through our professional installed partners, meaning that your customer, or I should say the installer's customer, they can't go to a big box retail store and buy one of these off the shelf. In fact, if they go onto Sonos's website, they can't even buy it from our website. The idea here is that there will be associated installation services with this product. So even if you try to buy it from our website, it won't let you buy it. There will be a link that says find an installer. So our distribution and our local install partners in that area will pop up on the find the installer page. So this is something that will only be available again through professional install partners like yourselves. So, this is an incredible product and an incredible opportunity for our installation partners. So the Era 100 Pro is sold as a pair, and it makes it more efficient and cost effective to put Sonos in places that an installer might not have put Sonos before. Now, it's designed for a commercial customer, but it can be used in residential spaces as well. We'll talk more about that over the course of the next 45 minutes or so. Era 100 Pro, as I mentioned, is based off of our popular Era 100 speaker. So the vast majority of businesses running Sonos today, as we know and as we've mentioned, they're used to talking. They're used to using, products like Play One, products like Sonos One, products like Era 100. But these aren't always viable options. But the all-in-one speaker, our research shows, is really the type of speaker that a commercial customer is looking for. Something that's easy, something that's somewhat small and doesn't take up a lot of space and is easy to use. Sounds a lot like our all-in-one speakers, right? So it made sense for us to use the same acoustic platform as the Era 100. So you can expect very similar results from an Era 100 from the Era 100 Pro. I think there's a common feeling within the industry that PoE speakers just are kind of like, PoE speaker. This is a PoE speaker that actually sounds really good. If you've heard an Era 100, you've pretty much heard an Era 100 Pro. Now, we did have to, of course, make some hardware optimizations to the speaker to make it more of a professional-oriented product. So, those optimizations, one, there's this eye bolt, which is included with the speakers. And that's just a secondary mounting point for stability if, the building code requires it or if it's in a high-traffic area. There's this hook receptacle we'll talk about here in a little bit. The big one you'll notice is that there's no power port on the Era 100 Pro. Simply an Ethernet port with 2 LED lights, and that is where the power comes in from, Ethernet. It is a power over Ethernet optimized for PoE plus speaker. And what you can't see is a high efficiency PoE power supply built into the speaker. Now, the taking a closer look at those LEDs, this is another optimization for the Era 100 Pro. These LEDs make status checking very simple. There's a green light and an amber light. If the green light's on, network. If it's not on, no network. If the amber light's on, PoE plus. If the amber light is off, it's running PoE. So ideally, both lights are on when the installer is installing Era 100 Pro. Next, we're going to talk about why Era 100 Pro. We'll spend just a couple of slides on that. I did want to mention briefly, I don't have a view of everybody of like the actual Ring Central or the service we're using. I'm using a different screen here. But I just wanted to mention that Roger and Berto, they are both in the chat. So if you have a question,
they're on it. They're all answering questions.
Perfect.
They're doing a great job.
Perfect. Thank you.
You keep doing
so word. All right, so why Era 100 Pro? Well, let me ask this. How many of your installers, and rhetorical question here, how many of them are already installing PoE products? Many of them are, and they know that PoE provides a reliability and an ease of install to a specific audience. Many are not, and this might be a conversation worth having and encouraging them to consider power over Ethernet, especially for speakers with the Era 100 Pro. Well, if you know Sonos is bringing that same great experience with a power over Ethernet speaker. It is ubiquitous for commercial installs, and installers like it for its reliability. Frankly, it's even becoming more of an emerging experience in commercial spaces as well. But we think that this provides a few benefits to the installers that are really key here. For starters, you skip the cost and complexities of having to install AC mains. The installer is not having to wait on a contractor, which anytime I'm in person in an audience, or if I'm on a meeting and I ask like, hey, how many of you have ever had to wait for an electrician before? Almost at least 3/4 of the room, their hands go up. Your installers have had to wait for electricians before. Your installers have had to, deal with, getting certain permits and passing that cost on to customers, and not to mention passing the cost of the actual electrician or contractor to the customer as well. That's money that the installer is not realizing. So the power over Ethernet speaker really made sense to us because, one, it's simple. It's a self-amplified speaker, so all you need is the speaker. You need to bring Ethernet cable, and the installer needs to bring their skill set, right? And of course, some power sourcing equipment as well. It's cost-effective, and because it is such a simple experience, and because you don't need to get a contractor involved, it's much more cost-effective to the customer, helping customers in those light commercial applications stay within their budget. So the installer, they can stay within their commercial customer's budget, but they can realize more of the money that customer is spending in that budget because they are able to meet more of those needs for the customer, which makes them the hero and sort of the one-stop shop place that the customer goes to for all of their technology, all of their smart service needs, the POS systems. That the installer can now take care of pretty much all of that. Meaning that you could build these flexible, customizable installation experiences, and the autonomy that gives the installer, being the only person that commercial customer needs to deal with. All of these things together make PoE just an obvious choice for us, and an obvious choice to be our first product for the professional channel. So basically what I'm telling you is you don't now have to choose between on an almost overly simple all-in-one system. Now, there is a place for just an all-in-one system of speakers. Of course there is. But the other option is these, traditional systems that tend to be much more complex. Now, sometimes those systems are needed. But what I'm telling you here is you don't have to choose now. Well, you either do Sonos or you do this, more complex system with, DSPs and matrix switches and running speaker wire and amplifiers and receivers and other, source devices and controllers on walls. That might be necessary for some customers, but you now have an option, or installers now have an option between those two things where they can say, hey, my customer needs something more complex than a traditional system of all-in-one speakers, but they don't necessarily need everything associated with some of these larger traditional systems. It's another tool in the installer's tool belt to sell Sonos and to be the hero of that commercial installation. All right, so now that we've talked about why we chose a PoE speaker to be our first speaker for the professional channel, let's just, very high level set on a couple of things when it comes to power over Ethernet. First, of course, are some key terms. Many of you probably know these key terms. We have a PD, or powered device. That's what Era 100 Pro is. Could also be a camera, an access point, intercom system, things like that. Then we have PSE, or power sourcing equipment. That is typically a PoE switch, could also be an injector, could be a hub, although that's not used as much. But PSE is what's delivering power to the PDs. So you'll hear me use these terms. Just wanted to make sure, just in case there's somebody here in the audience that didn't know, just wanted to make sure we're all in the loop here. So the PoE hardware that you'll need to get music up and running with Era 100 Pro. So the most common way is going to be the image on the left. The installer will need a power over Ethernet switch that will deliver enough power to the Era 100 Pros. Now, we do offer budgeting training. There's so much content in here. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's important to consider that when you're choosing, or an installer is choosing, a PoE switch. But you'll choose a PoE switch. However, it needs to provide enough ports and enough power to run however many Era 100 Pros are going to be on the system. And then, of course, other devices that may be on the system as well, like POS system, POS point of sale products, or cameras, or whatever. Now, another option is the image on the right, and that's basically you're using legacy, like just a standard switch. It's not a powered switch, and you can use an injector. That injector has two ports. It has a power port and a data port. So you're going to run data from the switch to the injector, and then Ethernet from the power to the Era 100 Pro. Note, in this installation on the right, you will need an injector for every Era 100 Pro on the system. Again, not as common, but you may run, an installer may run into a legacy system where it's like they have a bunch of switches. They don't necessarily need to upgrade those switches. But if you have ports, or, maybe there's a PoE switch with a couple additional ports that are unpowered, well, you can use those unpowered ports with an injector to power Era 100 Pro. So when an installer is choosing which type of PoE they should use with Era 100 Pro, they should choose basically PoE Plus. That's the simple of it. The primary difference you'll see here is the wattage. Era 100 Pro is optimized for PoE Plus. So you can use PoE with Era 100 Pro, but note that Era 100 Pro is only going to get half of the maximum power that it's capable of using for audio playback. On the other side of that, an installer can plug it into a PoE++ a PSE if they would like to, but it's Era 100 Pro pulls a maximum of 30 watts. So you're really not going to get the added power from PoE++ PSE. That means there's really no point in selling a customer PoE++ for the sake of Sonos. Now, if the installer needs that for other devices on the system, and they just so happen to run, some Era 100 Pros into it, that's fine. But just note that the maximum power Era 100 Pro is going to pull is 30 watts. So what kind of acoustic performance can you expect with Era 100 Pro when we're talking different types of PoE? Well, here's the thing. Our research showed that most customers listen to music in a commercial space between the 45 to 65% volume level. It's very rare it goes above that. And think about coffee shops, think about a restaurant. you just want your music really playing in the background. You don't necessarily want music, drowning out everybody talking. So the target here is really to create an incredible acoustic audio experience within that 45 to 65% level. So we made sure to do that. Taking a look at the bar on the right, that's when Era 100 Pro is powered by standard PoE. The middle is if it's powered by PoE Plus, which again is our recommendation. So you'll notice that the Era 100 Pro delivers pretty much the same acoustic results up to 90% volume when it's being powered by PoE Plus. And above that, it'll start limiting, all compared to the standard Era 100 that you would plug into a wall. So at the end of the day, the point really here to take away from this is if an installer is using PoE Plus to power Era 100 Pro, as long as your customer's not cranking their Era 100 Pros at 100% volume or over 90% volume, it's going to sound pretty much the same as a standard Era 100. Which, look, even in my home, it's very rare. I have Sonos scattered everywhere. I can speak for probably Roger and Berto as well. We have Sonos scattered everywhere in our home. It is very, very, very rare that you need to push Sonos that hard for incredible sound anyways. So that's kind of the deal with acoustic performance. Now we do, if it's powered by PoE, remember we have to start limiting a little bit earlier because we're not getting, the Era 100 Pro is only getting half of the power that it is capable of delivering. We'll have to slightly reduce bass as well. So if an installer can avoid running it with standard PoE or type 1 PoE, we would encourage that. Use PoE Plus if possible, which I've never talked to an installer so far that has made it seem like that might be an issue. Open to suggestions if it might be. Okay, so a couple of adjunct things we wanted to mention here with networking Era 100 Pro. You can use Era 100 Pro on Wi-Fi. The way an installer would do this is that they would plug an Era 100 Pro into a PoE injector, but that injector would not have an Ethernet cable run back to a switch. So basically, you are not providing a wired data connection to the Era 100 Pro, because Era 100 Pro, as soon as it senses a wired connection from data, it cuts off the Wi-Fi card. So if it's not seeing data hardwired, then it keeps the Wi-Fi card turned on. Now, this is very rare an installer is going to need to use this, but we just wanted to make sure that you knew it was available in the off chance an installer wants to use it wirelessly. This is how you do that. Also, I briefly mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we do offer budgeting training. I'm sure Berto and or Roger can share our webinar schedule out with you or with your installers. Probably more pertinent to installers, but the budgeting trainings, we just go over the high-level math of PoE budgeting for Era 100 Pro and take into consideration adding some other PDs. It's not rocket science. It's nothing too crazy. But if somebody is looking for a refresher or is like, what in the heck is PoE budgeting? We do offer training and education on that. And we'll be offering that over the course of the next month or two while we're waiting for more information on the announcement of Era 100 or the launch of Era 100 Pro. Okay, so the next thing we'll discuss, and I know I'm moving a little bit quick, I just want to make sure we cover everything. The next thing we'll discuss is the surface mount for Era 100 Pro. The surface mount is part of that Era 100 Pro solution, and it makes it simple to install Era 100 Pro in commercial spaces. It could be installed on brick, concrete, drywall, and many more surfaces. So the mount takes care of the installation needs. So really, as an installer, you buy the surface mount, you buy the Era 100 Pro, you show up, you bring Ethernet cables, PSE, and your two hands, right? So that really, this is just another part of that solution. The mount is available in both black and white, and just like the Era 100 Pro, and it's designed to match the visual identity of the speaker itself, providing easy access to the buttons. This is mount that is designed specifically for the Era 100 Pro. So the first step when installing the mount is to install the surface plate. So you'll see on the surface plate, there are 6 mounting holes. Installer doesn't need to use all 6 of them. They can use any of them that they deem necessary for the install. We just wanted to put them in different places. If the installer is, installing it in kind of a unique scenario, we already have different mounting points for them to secure it to the wall. I also next want to bring focus to those larger holes. The image on the top right shows those are Ethernet cable pass-throughs, and they are large enough to fit a terminated Ethernet cable. On the bottom right, you'll see these divots. That is if an installer is surface running the Ethernet cable. The Ethernet cable just fits into that indent, and then you can click the surface mount to the mounting plate. So just very easy to install, very easy to secure to the wall, and we've taken into consideration pretty much everything when an installer is running Ethernet cable to the speaker itself. So from there, you would really just mount the mount itself onto that surface plate. You'll hear a physical click when it's secured. I should mention, though, that we actually recommend first putting the speaker on the surface mount. So let's discuss the surface mount further, and then we'll talk about putting the speaker on it. So remember that hook receptacle I mentioned on the Era 100 Pro earlier? If you can, you see there's a hook on the speaker. It keeps it secure, especially if it's being mounted in a landscape orientation, or if it's being mounted upside down or from a ceiling, for example. You'll notice that there's a locking screw, though. That hook can come off, and you can use this mount for the standard Era 100. Keep in mind, though, if you're doing that, you'll only want to mount the Era 100 in portrait orientations. However, that hook keeps it stable, so Era 100 Pro can be mounted virtually at any angle you want it to be mounted. You'll see this index ball joint, which provides physical feedback for consistent and repeatable installation. There are these little teeth on the inside that click when you move that little ball joint. So if the installer is, let's say, installing 5 Era 100 Pro across from each other, next to each other, and they want a repeatable angle, they can, do 3 clicks down and 2 clicks to the left, for example, so it looks exactly the same, which is really awesome. This also ensures when you lock it into place that the speaker won't sag over time. So then, of course, you'll put the Era 100 Pro onto the mount. You'll make sure that hook is in the hook receptacle, and then you'll tie this screw into the bottom of the Era 100 Pro, securing into place. Use that eye bolt if the installer would like. They can use that eye bolt as well. Now, the reason we recommend putting this speaker on before clicking it into the surface plate, one is safety. It's just easier to do when you're not on the ladder. 2, it's easier to move that ball joint with the added weight of the Era 100 Pro. So that's why. Taking a look at the back, you'll notice all the interface buttons are accessible. The microphone switch, the Bluetooth switch, the actual Ethernet port, of course, needs to be accessible. This is what it would look like when you are routing the Ethernet cable from different orientations. And then you can pivot plus or minus 30 degrees, pan, tilt, and you can roll the mount 360 degrees. So you can, the installer can create, really unique installations for their customers. What's nice too is because our products are smart speakers, they have basically an adjustable DSP built into the speaker. So the speaker knows if it's in landscape, portrait, or ceiling mounted orientation, and it changes its DSP accordingly.
I never thought that the mount would be like the hit of the show for your booth. It really was. It's really, really cool mount.
Agreed. I know. Who would have thought a mount, right? But in typical fashion, we make unexciting things kind of exciting. All right. Next, let's talk about zones. So, how many of you have ever, obviously, rhetorical question here, how many of you have ever installed or sold Sonos to an installer in a scenario like this, where there's just tons of speakers inside of basically like one large space? What does an installer do in this situation? Well, what do you start naming things like, showroom floor 1, showroom floor 2, fitting room 1, fitting room 2? You get my point here, right? So we knew that this was going to be a problem in commercial spaces. So we are launching zones within the Sonos app. This helps installers easily name zones within inside the space that is easy for the end user to control. What's nice is because each area has different sound needs, you can create multiple zones within a commercial space, and you can then control those multiple zones as a single entity if desired by grouping those zones together. So don't be confused with groups, right? Groups are a necessary part of the Sonos experience. You need to be able to group speakers together. So we didn't want to mess with that at all. But zones is a semi-permanent bond between players. So think of the same as bonding like a sub with a Sonos Arc. You are now bonding Era 100 Pro with other Era 100 Pro, making it easy to fill large spaces. What's important too is that because they're bonded together, if a player loses power or maybe the whole place loses power, normally when that would happen, the grouping would break. And then you have to go back to grouping Office 1, Office 2, Office 3, Office 4, and so on. With a zone, because they're bonded, when the network goes back up and the Sonos system goes back up, those players bond back to each other automatically. So instead of it looking like those 4 players on the left, it would just look like one zone called Office. Again, making it so much easier for the end user to see the Sonos system, because instead of seeing what's on the left there, they would see what's on the right if all of them are bonded together in a zone. And if there are multiple zones, there could be dining room, there could be kitchen, there could be offices, back office, prep room, whatever that looks like. Event space, you can have multiple zones, and those zones can play different things at different times, or zones can be grouped together to play the same thing at the same time. So setting up a zone, very simple. All the installer needs to do is go to the settings cog, select the room that they want to start the zone, and hit set up zone. From there, they select which products that they want in that zone, and then it bonds them together in a zone. And of course, you can edit or remove players from a zone at any time. So if the customer decides, actually, I want the speaker over here, not over there, you can remove players from that zone. So again, ease of use is really what zones focuses on. Instead of having multiple rooms with very similar names, you can set them up in different zones. You can have some players in a zone and some players in another zone, and then a few players not in a zone. That's totally cool too. This is a very customizable experience for the installer, and therefore for the end user. You can set a volume trim on zones as well. So if maybe one player is lower than the other ones, you want to bring that trim down a little bit more so that the sound is balanced. You can set EQs on the different players. And a feature that we think installers are going to like is chime. Just makes it very easy to identify the player when it's in a zone. You got 10 players in a zone, it's going to be much easier to identify which player is which. All right, that is Era 100, the Era 100 Pro solution, Era 100 Pro itself, the surface mount and zone configuration within the Sonos app. I think of the Era 100 Pro mount in a very similar way I think of a phone case for my phone. Sure, there are a couple of crazy folks out there that will rock a phone without a case. Definitely happens. You might have some customers that don't need a surface mount with their speaker. However, typically when you get a phone, you think to yourself, yeah, I probably got to get a case too. So that's kind of that same thing. If you're talking Era 100 Pro, you're probably going to want to also talk about the surface mount. Hey, how are you mounting this? Sonos has a mount that they custom designed for this speaker. Here are all the benefits. You are probably going to be attaching a lot of surface mounts with Era 100 Pro. And remember, Era 100 Pro sold in a pair, surface mounts sold in a pair. All right, a couple of other things we wanted to mention about the Era 100 Pro. One, as I said, it's available exclusively through installation partners. To sum it up, PoE Plus, that is, that's, really the ideal way to use Sonos Pro. Or Sonos Era 100 Pro. Also should mention that it does have a 3-year manufacturer warranty. This is compared to our 1-year manufacturer warranty on the consumer side. So we knew that it was important for installers to have, or a product that is, for installers to have more of a warranty on it. So again, 3 years, and that starts from the date of registration of that player. I also wanted to mention that the Sonos Era 100 Pro does work with the rest of the Sonos ecosystem. We get that question a lot. So, the Era 100 Pro, you can have a few of those in the main dining room. Maybe there's a Beam or Arc Ultra here soon underneath a TV at the bar, and then a Sonos 5 is plugged in, greeting people with music at the entrance where there's a convenient power outlet right there, and they just want more music in that space. You can also use Era 100 Pro with a home theater system. So if you want to do that, you can. There are a couple caveats here. Remember that Era 100 Pro is power over Ethernet. So if you're running Ethernet wire to the Era 100 Pro, you're also going to need to run an Ethernet cable to the home theater primary. Or you can do wireless, and you could do it the way I mentioned earlier by running it to a PoE injector. So if you wanted to run that home theater system wirelessly, you could. But Era 100 Pro, it can be used as part of a standard home theater system or a standard Sonos system, just like any other Sonos speaker. So you can create some really interesting installations, with the installer to use for customers, and you can kind of mix and match what you're using. All right, rounding third and headed home. I think we're making decent time, but I'm going to keep the pace up to make sure we have time for Q&A. We're going to talk Sonos Pro. So we all know music is important for commercial spaces. It sets the tone and it sets the atmosphere. But what we found is that people who were creating these solutions for commercial customers, they didn't really hit a home run from an outsider's perspective. You may have, somebody who's delivering content really well or control really well. Maybe they deliver content and control really well. But none of these companies that are offering these types of solutions really had all three of these things nailed down. And at Sonos, we think that we've nailed all of these three things with Sonos Pro when you're considering using our hardware, with the content that it offers, and the control people know and love from Sonos. So the first and primary benefit of Sonos Pro is remote monitoring and management. Now, remember, a customer signs up for Sonos Pro. They are going to use Sonos Pro. They're going to pay for it on a monthly subscription, and they will have these additional benefits. So with Sonos Pro, they're going to get remote monitoring and management. They just need to go on the website. They log in to their system in Sonos Pro. They're going to be able to control their system from here. They'll be able to control global control settings. They'll be able to set schedules. They'll be able to set admins. So if there's somebody that works for them that is a trusted admin, they can invite them to have control of the system. But this is going to allow them more control over that system within itself. They can see from this dashboard, they can see multiple locations. So if it's a coffee shop, maybe they own 5 locations in a single city. They can see those 5 locations from the comfort of their home office, or the comfort of their office in their first flagship location, for example. So remote monitoring and management gives them the ability to see everything at a high level view. They'll be able to set schedules, as I mentioned, so certain music can play at certain times. They'll be able to add users to control the system if they want. I mean, if a business owner doesn't want to have anybody managing the music so they can focus on customers, that's fine. The owner can set schedules for each individual location, and they can play certain music at certain times, and the manager at that location can just focus on whatever the customers and whatever the employees need. The owner and trusted admins can allow or disallow things like AirPlay 2. They can allow or disallow line in, allow or disallow direct control. So it gives or cuts access off to some of these features that people might want to use. So a customer can't just walk into the the place of business, connect to the Wi-Fi, and then AirPlay their own music to the speaker in the place of business. There's also some remote management as far as rebooting a player. If the player is connected to Wi-Fi, it can be rebooted from there as well. You can see serial numbers. You can see if players are connected or disconnected from the dashboard as well. Now, this is important to decipher here. Somebody who subscribes to Sonos Pro is going to use the same app that they use to control their home residential system. They're going to use that app to control their business system. So all of those images I just showed you are our dashboard, which is a web dashboard, meaning you log into it from a phone, a tablet, or a computer via a web address. Now, if the commercial customer walks into their place of business, they're going to open up their Sonos app and they can control the music from their Sonos app. So they don't need to download any additional apps. They don't need to do anything, outside of the norm when they're just day-to-day controlling Sonos. That web dashboard is a separate thing that they can use to give them customizable control of their system. So in theory, a business owner can set it and forget it. They can set whatever they want in Sonos Pro and then not touch it again until it needs attention, right? Maybe they want to put a certain playlist, a Halloween playlist on for Halloween. They want to put like fun, spooky music in their coffee shop or something. They could do that, for example. Now, music services, we have a couple of different options here. If the commercial customer wants to use a commercial streaming service they're already using, they can do that with Sonos. And by the way, they can do that without a Sonos Pro subscription. But Sonos Pro is going to include commercially licensed music. Hundreds of commercially licensed stations that fit different moods, different genres, different types of businesses, all are included with a subscription to Sonos Pro. We have two different options, Essentials and Premium. Essentials is basically going to be, kind of indie music, but don't get me wrong, do not mistake this with elevator music. It is still really good music. It's just not kind of like that Billboard's top 100 type music. It's just indie artists that haven't signed with a label, which is increasingly more and more of the artists that are out there. Then we have premium, the premium subscription, which includes those popular songs and things like that people are familiar with. Think your Taylor Swifts, your Ed Sheerans, your kind of Billboard's top 100 type music that has more of that like music that people know and love. So they have two different options here. So to clear things up, to make it super simple, music on Sonos looks like this. Residential music services, don't use those in a commercial space. In fact, I would tell you, I would get in the habit of recommending installers, let customers know that in most, if not all states, it is illegal to stream residentially licensed music from Pandora, from Spotify, from Apple Music. It's illegal to do that in a commercial setting. So you need to use commercially licensed music. They can do that through a commercially licensed streaming service, or if they sign up for Sonos Pro, that will include commercially licensed music with that subscription that is curated by Sonos. Of course, we also have dedicated support for Sonos Pro customers as well. So pricing and packaging, we do offer both monthly and annual pricing. We do offer volume discounts as well for monthly subscribers. We also offer volume pricing for annual customers. I'm not going to break down all those prices. You can get this at sonos.com/business. But as far as a target audience, things that installers need to know. Target audience, medium-sized businesses, coffee shops, restaurants, bars, maybe some health hospital, some small local health and hospitality places. I'm thinking the local chiropractor. I'm thinking, the local bed and breakfast, that type of thing. We will have tools for installers that are available for sales enablement. We have one pagers. We have things breaking down different products and the benefits of Sonos Pro. And just the web dashboard, that sort of thing. These are things that are all available for installers. Now we do also offer. Unfortunately, we do not offer a kickback for installers buying through distribution. However, that is something that we are trying to figure out really how we incentivize installers buying through distribution. But then do note that I would say hey, getting your customers set up with Sonos Pro, that's more contact points for you, which means more revenue in your pocket. Now, the installer will need to help high level the customer get enabled. And, that is all kind of like point of sale type things. Really that's it. Don't want to spend too much time on that. Want to get to Q&A. That is Sonos Pro, remote monitoring and management, music and control that works for the customer, and priority support from customers. So, my friends, that is pretty much everything you need to know about Sonos for commercial applications. Era 100 Pro is our PoE Plus speaker. The Surface mount is the mount design for the Era 100 Pro. Zones make it easier to control Sonos in the app. And then Sonos Pro gives a commercial customer so much more control over their commercial system. All right. That was a mouthful. I know that was a lot to take in. Would love to answer any unanswered questions that might be in the Q&A.
I mean, you did a great job, Matthew, but I want to give a shout out to Alberto and Roger, who answered probably about 200 questions in less than an hour. We have 170
I'm
people
trying.
on, so they did a great job. I think we're pretty good. We got them mostly answered, and the Q&A was good. The poll question was asking if you guys out there are going to implement the new Era 100 Pro and future commercial applications. Looks like over 75% of you said yes, and it seems like percentage of projects out there you guys are using Sonos for. I mean, it's 98% of our attendees out there are using Sonos in some form or fashion. So it seems like the new Era 100 Pro is going to be a big hit for us. Again, we're looking at Q1, right, of 2025. That's kind of
I think officially we're still saying early 2025. So more to come.
Okay, more to come on that. Again, really appreciate you guys. Good stuff. We have 2 more trainings with Sonos, and we're going to be giving away some products in those trainings. So make sure you join us for the next 2 Sonos trainings coming up here later this week. So Matthew will be doing it, and hopefully Roger and Alberto will be on it as well, answering questions, because we're definitely going to
taking it on the road. Sure.
Take it on the road. Oh, you're not going to be here, Roger?
No, I'll be on it. I'll just be I'll be in a different market. Yep.
Okay. Very good. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next one. We're going live from the Sonance studio. So we'll see you on the call in about 4 minutes next webinar.